No doubt we're truly in a time of transformational change, and we couldn't ask for a better leadership team than our current Aviation General Officer Steering Committee led by our branch chief, Major General Clair Gill. Please help me welcome him back to the podium for his laydown.
A major geopolitical shift is unfolding as China, Russia, and Iran tighten their alliance.
Those who long for peace must prepare for war.
Many people have expressed fears that we are closer to war than we have ever been.
President Trump drawing a red line with Iran, telling the regime not to pursue a nuclear weapon or it'll face military action.
It isn't just about firepower.
More than 20 world leaders are gathering in Russia for the BRICS summit.
War has been raging in Ukraine for nearly 3 years.
The character of war is changing at a speed we've never seen before. It's unprecedented.
In a world of uncertainty, one thing is clear. Army Aviation is ready. What are you doing today to prepare for tomorrow's fight? All right. As I'm getting closer to the end of my career and putting my resume together, one thing I won't be doing is putting that on my application for Hollywood. All right. Well, hey, good morning, maybe good afternoon, right at noon here. Great to have everybody here. Obviously, I'm honored here to be speaking on behalf of the branch, the AVCO leadership who you saw me up here with, the General Officer Steering Committee, a lot of legacy leaders here, awardees, super proud of those guys. We've got a lot of heroes in the force. Many of you, as I think about like who's in the audience here, have been the giants on whose shoulders we have all stood, and we've got our international allies and partners, so really great to have everybody here. And then obviously, we've said it before, but I want to thank Quad A. Walt, Bill, Janice, Joe, the whole team for putting together another quality summit. I think everybody's going to have a great time this week. Obviously, after this session here, the floor will be open, and I encourage you to all go out there. Obviously, industry, we are working with you, we're listening, we are trying to communicate with you. A lot of things are happening right now. I did not plan the rollout of the Army Transformation Initiative 2 weeks before Quad A. That puts us in a little bit of an interesting spot as we're trying to understand with some fidelity what that looks like. As we engage with you, I promise we'll be as transparent as we can be. The answer to some of the questions might be, we just don't know yet. We're still flushing it out. But on behalf of all of us here, welcome to Quad A. It's great to have you here for the 2025 Summit. Okay, the purpose is that this is a professional forum, a professional dialogue. Obviously, Dr. Jack Watling gave us a real sort of mandate, like we've got to do something. We've got to be transforming. We've got to be changing. We've got to think what the environment that we're going to face as a nation and as an army and as a branch looks like, and how are we going to dominate that space? I say it all the time back at Fort Novosel. We're not Army Aviation for Army Aviation. We're Army Aviation for the Army. We're Army Aviation for the nation. And so everything that we do, regardless of whether we like it or we agree with it or whatever, needs to be with that in mind, that we have to be prepared to win our nation's wars when called. We've been given a mandate by the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of the Army, and the Chief. They've been on the Hill testifying. We have got to get more lean. We've got to get more lethal. And one of my favorite quotes from General Eric Shinseki, our chief back in kind of the Iraq war, sort of the beginning of GWAT, he used to say, if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. So we've got to ensure that we continue to provide the capability to see, sense, strike, move, and extend the battlefield. That's our charter. That's what we give the Army, and we got to do it in different ways than we used to. Okay, so let me talk a little bit of transformation stuff. I just want to use a little vignette as I think about change, transformation, and the difficulties of it. So in 1977, we launched our first space shuttle into low Earth orbit. And I think anybody and there's some folks in the crowd here that were alive. Actually, there's probably more of you that were alive in 1977 than weren't. We absolutely felt a great sense of national pride when we put that space shuttle into space. I remember as a kid living in Washington, D.C., they put on the back of the jumbo jet and they flew it around just to showcase, the capability to ensure that program stayed alive. And it was alive until 2011. Just tremendous capability. Obviously, we had a couple accidents with it. But in 2011, we just said, this is not the direction we need to go. It's just too expensive. We can't keep up with it. And we grounded it. And I think everybody felt like a national sort of sense of what just happened. That sort of iconic American ingenuity just got grounded. And apparently we're going back to rockets. Like the stuff that we used to do in the 60s. Like, what are we thinking? Right? But what are we doing now with rockets? And we're literally launching them autonomously. And they got some controls, but it looks a whole lot more like a touch screen. And we're catching them back on Earth with some chopsticks. Right? That's innovation. Everybody feels that same sense of pride the first time you saw a rocket land on a floating ship or get caught with the chopsticks, right? That's the mentality that we need to have when we think about, is what we're doing right now still relevant, and is it the best capability that we can deliver? And so as a branch, we're thinking through not getting rid of manned aviation, but how do we augment manned aviation with unmanned, uncrewed systems that will shape the future fight. And so what I don't want to do is be standing there when the music stops and not have a chair. I want to lead the Army into this. And so as the proponent for all things unmanned, uncrewed systems, we're representing the rest of the Army. We're not taking it, as Dr. Jack Watling just mentioned, this isn't something that we're going to own all by ourselves. We're not going to, sort of say, hey, we're going to put the regulations on top of it. We're going to tell you how to operate it. What we're going to do is figure out what are those things that need aviation expertise. He mentioned, airspace integration. I'll talk to that in a minute. And what are the things that can be MOS agnostic and that anybody can operate, because we got the technology with universal control that anybody can operate, and we can power that down to the user level. And so we're working with the Fires Center, we're working with the Maneuver Center to shape that. I want to talk about the environment, right? So when you think about what's in a brigade combat team, in the TIC brigades, the transformation and contact brigades that we're fielding right now, they're going to have 500 to 700 things that break friction with the ground. That used to be solely our domain. So that presents some challenges in terms of how do you fly a medevac aircraft to go in there to an LZ and pick up wounded, right? How do we think through managing airspace both within the Army and what used to be just us, right? That lower tier of the air domain or the upper tier of the ground domain. And then how do we integrate that with the high flyers as well, right? Because airspace is managed by the Air Force. So we're gonna have a TTX with the Air Force here at the end of the month where we're gonna talk about that. And they are well aware of that. The other piece of the environment that I think is really important for us to think about is this idea of degraded visual environment. So whether it's degraded visual conditions, think brownout, that kind of environment. Many of you have mastered that the old-fashioned way by just good real pilotage. Or weather. We've always had sort of weather minimums where commanders at different echelons were able to sort of sign off on a risk assessment and say, hey, we think we can go on this mission. We're willing to do it. It's important enough. We've got the right crews. We've put all the control measures in place. We're getting to the point now where we have the technology, and many of you have worked on it, industry, Army leaders that are here, have tested it and validated, and it's actually flying in the 160th right now. We've got it in a couple of medevac units as well. But this idea that the same way that those of you that grew up in the 70s and 80s dominated the night when we brought night vision goggles in, and we were the only people that could do that, now that has proliferated around. We've got it, in commercial aviation, civil, police, those medevacs doing it. But now we've got the opportunity to own that 0-0 weather environment where when the ground force calls and says, hey, we really need to execute this mission, the commander can say we're a go. So that's really exciting. I know there's plenty of vendors out there that are working on that, so I hope you get an opportunity to see that on the ground floor at the downstairs. Two things a little closer home at Fort Novacell. So we are transforming how we train. We call it the Aviation Tactics Instructor Course. So all of you instructor pilots that went through IPC and the instructor pilot course, we've put a tactical umbrella over that, and I'll talk about what that's going to look like. And then flight school next. Many of you are well aware there's a lot of vendors downstairs that have some great ideas. Not just different aircraft, but different ways of thinking about how we train to produce the best aviator, and I'll cover that. And then the last piece that I want to finish up with is just this idea of the warfighter culture. I think, like I said, a lot of giants out there in the audience. I want to maintain that and I want to grow it in our force, in our branch. Okay, so uncrewed systems. If you're a 15 Echo, that's formerly a shadow mechanic, or a 15 Whiskey, a shadow operator. We divested that system last year. Everybody's well aware of that. The Army had to make some tough choices about what we kept and what we got rid of. So we divested that in the future armed reconnaissance aircraft. We are transitioning that MOS from specific to a system that was a legacy system to just now a tactical UAS operator and mechanic. We are currently training that at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. So if you come into the Army and say, I want to be a 15 Echo or a 15 Whiskey, we're going to train you on small UAS. You're going to learn how to operate it. You're going to learn how to repair it. You're going to fly FPVs like Orcas, the C-100s, the Teals. We're integrating in additive manufacturing, so they're actually producing parts using CNC machines, some really interesting technology there. And then on the warrant officer side, the 150 uniforms are now going to be our tactical master integrators, right? So they're going to focus on acquiring the systems, making sure we're getting the right things, employing the systems, the life cycle management of the systems, managing the spectrum and electronic warfare, and being that airspace integrator for us. So very, very important that they're tied in with our 150 Alphas as well. We're also, the chief has asked us to take a look at the tactical UAS platoon and how many people we're going to put in the BCTs, right? So where you used to sort of operate those systems from a shelter and sanctuary, now if you go to Fort Huachuca, they got face paint on, they're down in hide sites, they are literally training just like their infantry brethren or whichever other unit they might be assigned to. So we're pretty excited about where that's going. It is definitely a growth industry. We're still trying to figure out where the line is between where do you need that MOS trained operator versus anybody. And we hire great soldiers into the Army. We can train anybody to do anything. Where do we want to focus it on things that we think are specific aviation related skills versus we're getting to the point now where anybody can operate a small UAS. And so some of that has to do a little bit with the size, reach, effect of what the uncrewed system might do. Okay, so I mentioned the environment. We serve as the executive agent, so I'm not the proponent for the Army for airspace. That remains with the Combined Arms Center at Fort Leavenworth, and that's because of the jointness of it. But we're going to be the action officer for General Beagle and his team. And as I mentioned, we're going to get together with the Air Force here at the end of the month. I think there are a couple things that we need to think about. One is procedural. How do you manage airspace from just a procedural deconfliction? You go here, I'll go there. You stay up there, I'm going to have a corridor. But we're getting to the point now where every soldier is a sensor and they have really good networked information. And so I use this example. My son has a quadcopter. He lives in Arlington, Virginia. If he takes it out and turns it on, it's going to say you can't fly. You're in restricted airspace. So basically the ATO tells him not here. Go somewhere else, and there's available airspace, he can fly it. I want the same thing for a UAS operator out there in our brigade combat team. So he pops down his TAC device, and he gets ready to fly, and he finds out that he's underneath an active corridor, and it'll just say, you can't fly here, right? So that's where we can go with the technology. It's there. We could purchase that. We just need to get it to where we can manage it, where it's affordable, where we can get it proliferated everywhere, so that we can get away from just the procedural aspect of it and get to where everything is part of that sensor network. So the aerial tier network extension, where everything that's up there is talking. Our future vertical lift cross-functional team is currently down with 1st Brigade, 101st Airborne at JRTC right now. They are putting position location information, PLI, transmitters on each of a couple things that are flying, and we're testing that out to make sure that everything can talk to each other. And imagine if every aircraft, including manned aircraft, could talk to the network and say, example, medevac, I'm a higher priority, I'm moving through this space, and everything else is acknowledge, I'll go down, I'll go over, right? The technology's there, it's still in development, but that's one of the ways that we're thinking about it. All right, so you heard the Vice was pretty excited to announce that FLRAA is going to first be fielded to the 101st Airborne Division. We're really excited about that. It makes a lot of sense for us. I always say, you know, everybody wants to be the first unit equipped. You might want to be the second unit equipped, right? So we're going to put a lot of work on General McIntosh's team there to tell us what right looks like. But this is pretty exciting. Part of the Army Transformation Initiative is the Army doubled down and said, hey, we're all in on FLRAA. We're going to work with the Bell Textron team to accelerate this. So we are in the throes of the negotiation right now to figure out how are we going to field the first engineering, manufacture, design aircraft, and then on the heels of that, continue right into low-rate production so we can get some aircraft out in the hands of aviation warfighters in the 101st and get this thing off and running. So we're really excited about that, certainly very proud of the 101st. I think maybe, so there's a lot of leap-ahead technology with moving from conventional rotary wing to tilt rotor. Certainly we've been talking with the Marine Corps and the Air Force. We've got folks from Fort Novosel that have already been through training with them. So we'll stand that up. We're going to figure out, you know, how we train that first unit. But I think maybe one of the most exciting pieces of it for me is the idea of the Open System Architecture, MOSA, right? So this gets away from the old days when you built an aircraft, the company that manufactured it owned the intellectual property, and if you wanted to make a modification to it, you had to go back and ask them and pay them, right? So now we have put some parameters out through the Program Executive Office team that is saying, here's sort of the parameters of how you're going to integrate in an open architecture. This is how you're going to talk with us, and when new technology comes online, it'll be a little quicker to integrate, if you will. So I think, you know, from a long game, when you think about how tech is moving and iterating at the pace that it is, this is probably, for me, the most leap ahead technology. But twice as far, twice as fast is still pretty exciting for FLRAA. We're expecting probably the first one to fly in 27. Give or take, right? So this is just us trying to spitball where we think the future is, and we think we'll get some aircraft to the 101st in late 28, maybe even early 29, based off some of the things that we're doing with the Army Transformation Initiative to accelerate it. All right, so the Aviation Tactics Instructor Course. It's critical that those lead trainers that are out there in the Army understand the operating environment and can teach and train our young aviation warfighters in the tactics that it's going to require to survive. You heard in the previous brief, like if you're just out flying around, you know, doing ring routes or whatever, daytime at 1,000 feet, you have zero chance of survivability. But I do think that if we got called, if the bat phone rang tonight with Lima model Blackhawks and Delta model Apaches still in our formation, we've got the leadership, we've got the right expertise. You saw a lot of folks getting awards up here. They're training their units right now to be lethal tonight, and then how we transition to the next thing in the future. So the Tactics Instructor Course is designed to teach in a tactical operating environment. We're not quite getting to like where the Marines are with MOTS, but provide a tactical operating environment, challenge them in terms of the level of understanding of how we fly in a tactical environment. And then when they go back to their units, we're really focused on not just doing traffic patterns and RL progressions. The UTE program can take care of that if units are taking advantage of it. Some are quite effectively. But it's making pilots in command, and it's teaching platoons to operate tactically. So we're pretty excited about it. I will say this. If you have ever served at Fort Novosel or Fort Rucker, like wholesale change is not something people get real excited about. All right, and so when it was not my idea. There's a lot of great officers that pushed this program that preceded me, but we said, hey, we understand it's going to be painful. We understand it's going to be costly. We understand we're probably not going to get it right on the first iteration. We're doing it. Sound familiar? So we are pushing this ATIC initiative right now. We're calling it 1.0. We've got a couple classes already under our belt, and we're going to continue to push till what we're going to call 2.0 probably next year. So we've got DES, our Directorate of Evaluation and Standards, our DOTD, the Directorate of Training and Doctrine, wholly in bed with us here to make sure that we get it right, and to tell us where we can accept risk and where we think we're losing fidelity on things that we had previously done. So I'm really proud of the team for pushing on it. Like I said, it hasn't always been popular, but it's something that we're pushing for. All right, flight school next. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail on it because I'm going to have a Q&A session, I think right back in here on Friday afternoon. So no early departures for you. That's how we keep you through the end of this. Flight school next is another one of these generational change things, right? So my sense is I'm looking out here and I see a lot of forehead. A lot of you trained in a TH-55 or maybe trained in a UH-1. Or certainly I know there's some TH-67 trainers out there. And of course, we're on the 4th iteration right now with the UH-72 Lakota, EC-145. It's time that we take a look at what we're doing and determine, is it producing the best aviator that we can for the Army? And I think, this is sort of self-reflection. A lot of what I'm hearing out there is that they're great system operators. They don't know how to fly the aircraft. And so that's a little bit of a challenge back at me, right? I got to get the mirror out and make sure that what we're delivering to the Army is what we need. You heard General Mingus say the last 2 years have been pretty rough. So we're trying to turn the corner there, and we think that how we train aviators. So a lot of people think flight school next is all about a helicopter. It is. There's a significant component of that. I mean, it's the most obvious one. But I think, how people learn, we're still teaching people generally in the same way that I went through flight school 30 years ago, right? And so we know using technology a lot, and some of you that are involved in Flight School Next have presented some really interesting ideas that we're interested in learning more about and adopting. How do you get in that cognitive development of a young man or woman who's getting ready to do things in multiple dimensions and talk on radios at the same time? And we think we can do that through things like AR, VR. We think we can go to some cloud-based learning models where they have access to information, better fidelity. I mean, you've all seen on History Channel or YouTube or whatever, you can get inside of an engine, right? We've got the graphics now where you can truly understand things. The principles of aerodynamics haven't changed, but how we teach it to make sure that you retain that knowledge so you can later correlate it when you're busy is what's really interesting to me. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about that and where we're going. We do have, I think everybody in here we got a lot of Army aviators and folks in industry well aware that we've got a pilot program, right? Pilot program ongoing right now. We've got 2 classes of 8 students that are under a small contract. They're learning. They're actually going through a program that's going to produce them as an FAA certified private pilot with an instrument ticket. Now, I don't think we're going to be able to do that at the scale when we bring it back to the schoolhouse, but we're learning a lot about how they're training and what they're training in. I love solo, right? They're going to solo an aircraft. They're going to get in and fly it all by themselves. Not stage field solo, not partnered solo, although we did bring those back, but they're soloing the aircraft, which I think, in terms of the maturity and development of somebody that's going to be an aviator is going to produce a tremendously better product that we deliver to the Army when they get to their first operational unit. So I'm really excited about that. And so, like I said, 14:30 on Friday if you want to come back. All right, and then I'm going to finish up on the warfighter culture. All right, so our culture is the Army culture. I think there are some things just in terms of generational shifts that make me wonder, like, are we moving in the wrong direction? I'm sure a lot of folks that are sitting right here looked at my generation and said, man, these guys, we need to get them to eat their Wheaties or something. Like, I'm sure this has happened every generation. But I want to make sure that we're going to honor some heroes later on, and all those awardees. Like, that to me is the example of the warfighting culture that I want in our branch, and I want everybody in our branch. Doesn't matter if you are, an engine repairer, or whether you're a W3 SP out in some company. Like, I want everybody to have that same focus, because everybody in this room understands the consequences of what we do. General Walt Pyatt, one of my favorite leaders in the Army, used to say, every day in Army aviation is a live fire event. Right? There's somebody right now with their hand on the trigger with a starter button somewhere in the world getting ready to start that engine. I guarantee over the last 30 years, not many minutes have gone by that we didn't have Army aviation breaking friction with the ground constantly somewhere in the world. Think about that. That we are flying around the clock, and it's never runway to runway, right? It's harsh conditions. The warfighter culture means that we've got to train folks to be able to operate in austere environments, in small teams, a lot of things that Jack just talked about. We've got to be able to operate within commander's intent when you can't get a hold of your commander. You got to be able to look at maintenance and figure out, like, hey, is that something that we're going to be able to work with, or is that like got to get elevated to higher? Like, I think, the mission focus is something that we've really got to think about, and we've got to also understand, how do we team the manned things that we have with the unmanned systems that are coming on board. We're going to have launched effects in every division next year, right? So when you're down there on the floor, you're going to see a lot of things that are going to be fielded to the Army in the next year. And as Army Aviation, I think we have just an absolute solemn responsibility to deliver whatever it is that the Army needs. We're not going to stop flight school. We're going to be flying manned aircraft for quite some time. But I do think that there are certain things that we can offload to unmanned things so that we can focus where we want humans in the loop more deliberately. All right, and then last thing, like I said, we continue to deliver the ability for the Army to see, sense, strike, move, and extend the battlefield. I want division commanders, I want corps commanders asking for more capability. I don't want to go down and say, hey, Army, you need to buy that thing, right? I want them to say, I want commanders, ground commanders to say, I need that thing, and I need somebody capable to operate it, employ it, make sure that it's part of the combined arms effort that fits in the joint fight. So with that, I'll wrap it up. I'm absolutely proud of what this branch is doing. Like I said, when the phone rings, we've got to be ready to meet tomorrow's challenges tonight. So thanks for everybody for coming. Above the best, and fly Army.